1. Introduction. RAWSEP View. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building, for just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the eco-design wood stove, and international convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP View. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary. Episode 57 DUI. March 6, 2025. Germany lifts debt limit to build military support for Ukraine. In episode 57 DUI. 1A. United States Warren Buffett acts like the U.S. stock market is in bubble territory. 1B. United States Democrats somebody slap me and wake me up. Democrats react to the Trump speech. 1C. United States explainer out-of-date polls to wrong aid amounts fact-checking the Trump address to Congress. 1D. United States bad nominee MAGA lashes out at disgraceful Amy Coney Barrett after vote against Trump. 1E. United States Trump administration Supreme Court rejects Trump request to continue freezing $2 billion in foreign aid. John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett join liberal justices to leave and place lower court order on USAid. 1F. United States EPA Trump administration White House to overhaul $42.5 billion Biden-era internet plan, probably to Elon The Musk advantage billionaire cost-cutter Starlink service, the likely beneficiary of Trump plan to alter rural internet program. 2A. Texas and Measles and the Kennedy Jr. idea of vitamins instead of turning to modern medicine for vaccines or use of masks instead of vaccines. RFK Junior focuses on unconventional measles treatments, driving worries about misinformation. RAWSEP View. The vain hope that Kennedy Jr. will not double down on his misinformation campaign against vaccines is dashed in the case of the measles outbreak among the unvaccinated in West Texas in February and March of 2025. 2B. Washington Richland Hanford Works nuclear site, most contaminated U.S. nuclear site, is set to be the largest solar farm. 3A. Germany is back. Coalition unveils bumper $13 trillion spending pledge as country breaks with constitution to revive economy. 3B. German spending plans send powerful message to Putin and Trump. 3C. Germany European markets soar as Germany moves to lift debt brake and raise defense spending. Main content. 1A. United States Warren Buffett acts like the U.S. stock market is in bubble territory. He might be onto something. RAWSEP View. Fortune magazine employs a bubble detector to test if Warren Buffett is right. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. Fortune March 5, 2025. Warren Buffett has offloaded all of the Berkshire market tracking ETFs over the last 5 years. Americans have watched equity markets soared. Just last month, the S&P 500 reached an all-time high of 6,144, up over 89% from January 2020. Such a precipitous increase in the value of U.S. equities has stirred up the usual equity bears screaming bubble. Bubble is a popular term, but it is ill-defined and fuzzy. It is supposed to refer to a period in markets when asset prices are above a level justified by their fundamentals. To decide whether we agree with Buffett, we employ the Dr. X bubble detector, a concept described in an August 1996 letter by a late Nobel laureate in economics. The Dr. X bubble detector is the wealth-to-income ratio for stocks divided by the wealth-to-income ratio for bonds. The wealth-to-income ratio indicates the length of time it takes for a constant flow of income to purchase a given stock of income-producing assets. 1,000 shares of Apple, say, or 1,000 T-bills. As the ratio increases, more time is required to purchase a source of income, implying that assets are becoming more expensive relative to income. Therefore, the bubble detector measures the value of equities relative to the value of fixed income securities. Red lights flash when it becomes significantly more expensive to purchase $1 worth of earnings. from stocks than to purchase $1 worth of interest income from bonds. If stock prices rise and income stays the same, it takes more time to purchase a given quantity of stocks. As of December 2024, this stock component is 0.08008. The proxy for bonds is 0.2190219. The bubble detector has averaged 0.1410141 since January 1987. Before the dot-com bubble in the early 2000s, it peaked at 0.3229%. Since then, it has dropped as low as 0.0536% in September 2012, and even lower to 0.0306% at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. As of December 2024, the bubble detector level is 0.3655%, all the makings of a bubble thanks to a healthy dose of helicopter money from the Fed during the pandemic, as well as an AI-related breakthrough in the U.S. tech industry. Stocks have ripped higher for the last 5 years, outpacing growth in personal income per capita. At the same time, the inflation that resulted from the Fed monetary excesses has driven bond yields higher, so we have had a trend opposite to that of the early stages of COVID-19. The wealth-to-income ratio for bonds fell, and the wealth-to-income ratio for stocks rose. 1B United States Democrats. Somebody slap me and wake me up. Democrats react to the Trump speech. RAWSEP View. This article implies that the Trump speech was the same old pack of lies. The danger of living in an unreal world of the Trump imagination is that the United States will not tackle problems in the real world, and in fact Trump will create problems in the real world, such as firing necessary United States government workers and withdrawing support from Ukraine defense from Russia, as well as abandoning needed efforts to slow climate change. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization, The Guardian, Wednesday, March 5, 2025. Democrats panned the Trump first primetime speech to Congress since returning to the White House. As reaction to the address revealed a country still deeply split on political lines and an opposition party unsure of how to deal with his radical agenda. The Democrat exclusion from the corridors of power. Democrats are in the minority in both the Senate and House of Representatives, has left them with limited options on how to effectively respond to the Trump hardline 1 hour 40-minute oration. Rows of people looking at Trump in resist shirts. Key takeaways from the Trump speech to Congress. Speech. Some rising stars, including Chris Murphy, a vocal senator from Connecticut, protested by staying away. Those who attended showed their displeasure by turning their backs on Trump as he spoke and holding up placards with messages like "No Kings Save Medicaid" and "Musk steals," in reference to the leading government cost-cutting role being played by the billionaire tech entrepreneur Elon Musk. The protest was disparagingly compared to bingo signs by one normally sympathetic commentator. The audience of silent, grim-faced Democrats included some of them holding Ukrainian flags or wearing garments in the Ukraine colors, but Democrat displeasure was not all passive. Some members shouted January 6th in reference to the 2021 Trump-inspired attack by a violent mob on the U.S. Capitol when the president vowed to impose law and order and extolled the police. The most assertive act of resistance came from Al Green, a member of Congress from Texas, who was escorted from the chamber on the order of the House Speaker Mike Johnson after loudly heckling Trump and telling him he had no mandate. Afterwards, Green, 77, who was preparing articles of impeachment against Trump, told reporters that his expulsion was worth it to let people know that there are some people who are going to stand up. A more measured Democratic reaction came from Alyssa Slotkin, a senator from Michigan, who was chosen to deliver the Democratic official response, having won her seat last November in a traditional election battleground state. Slotkin, a former CIA officer, lambasted the Trump apparent betrayal of Ukraine and said Ronald Reagan, a Republican predecessor, would be rolling in his grave at the Trump deference to Putin. The Russian leader Trump loves to promise peace through strength, she said in a televised address delivered from her Michigan hometown of Wyandotte. That is actually a line he stole from Ronald Reagan. But let me tell you, after the spectacle that just took place in the Oval Office last week, Reagan must be rolling over in his grave. We all want an end to the war in Ukraine, but Reagan understood that true strength required America to combine our military and economic might with moral clarity. As a Cold War kid, I am thankful it was Reagan and not Trump in office in the 1980s. Trump would have lost us the Cold War. Slotkin also attempted to rouse her Democratic colleagues against depressed apathy in the face of the Trump aggressive agenda, while inspiring citizens fearful for the future of U.S. democracy. I have lived and worked in many countries. I have seen democracies flicker out. I have seen what life is like when a government is rigged, she said. Do not for one moment fool yourself that democracy is not precious and worth saving. Advising to resist a seemingly unrestrained Trump, she continued, do not tune out. America needs you now more than ever. If previous generations had not fought for democracy, where would we be today? We all know that our country is going through something right now. We are not sure what the next day is going to hold, let alone the next decade. But this is not the first time we have experienced significant and tumultuous change as a country. Every single time, we have only gotten through those moments because of two things: engaged citizens and principled leaders. Jasmine Crockett, a Democratic member of Congress from Texas, called it really psychotic for Trump to take over Greenland. We are in love with Putin? What is happening? This is not America. This is a terrible nightmare. Somebody slap me and wake me up because I am ready to get on with it. 1C United States explainer. Out of date polls to wrong aid amounts. Fact-checking the Trump address to Congress. The Trump marathon address to a joint session of Congress was littered with false claims he has been corrected on, but continued to repeat. RAWSEP View. The article below contains a needed fact check of some of the litany of lies Trump spoke in his March 4, 2025 address. Trump had been corrected only last week by Macron, Starmer, and Zelensky on his wrong figures on aid to Ukraine, but on March 5, 2025 Trump chose to repeat incorrect figures of United States aid, which in reality is dwarfed by European aid to Ukraine. The Rasmussen poll is also exposed here as an intrinsically partisan Republican poll, which secretly reveals results to Trump before Rasmussen publishing the results. Other polls show the public thinking that the United States is going in the wrong direction under the second Trump administration. The Social Security system knows there is a glitch in the system that retains records of people who are deceased, but the Social Security system counters the glitch and does not send checks to dead people. Musk examples of fraud are overwhelmingly incorrect or invented excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against with smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization, The Guardian, Wednesday, March 5, 2025. The Trump marathon address to a joint session of Congress on Tuesday was littered with false claims, many of them falsehoods he has previously stated, been corrected on, and continued to repeat regardless. Here are some of the main statements he made that are just not true. Key takeaways of lies from the Trump Congress speech. The United States has not given Ukraine $350 billion since the Russian full-scale invasion in 2022. The president repeated one of his new favorite lies, that the United States has given Ukraine $350 billion since the Russian full-scale invasion in 2022, and Europe has given just $100 billion. In fact, the U.S. has spent about $120 billion, while Europe, counted as the sum of the EU and individual member states, has allocated nearly $138 billion in help for Ukraine. When the contributions from non-EU countries like the UK are included, the European share is even larger. Last week, on 3 consecutive days, 3 visiting world leaders corrected Trump on this false statement while sitting next to him in the Oval Office: the French President Emmanuel Macron, the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and the Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky. Trump wrongly suggested that millions of dead people might be getting Social Security payments. Trump drew attention to the fact that a Social Security Administration database includes millions of people who would be over 110 years old. There is a real flaw in the Social Security system, which could enable fraud, but apparently does not. That flaw was revealed in a 2015 report by the Independent Inspector General for the Social Security Administration, who discovered that the agency did not have death records for millions of people who had passed away as of 2015. The Inspector General found there were approximately 65 million number holders age 112 or older who did not have death information on their files. According to the report, Social Security payments were still being made to just 13 people who had reached the age of 112. At least one of those people was certainly still alive and tweeting at the time the data in the report was compiled in 2013. When the report was issued in 2015, the oldest person with a Social Security number and no death record on their file was born in 1869, but there was no record of payments still being made to that person, who would have been nearly 150. In fact, the Social Security Administration already has in place a procedure to conduct interviews with anyone who reaches the age of 100 to verify that they are alive and their account is not being used by someone else to collect fraudulent payments. Trump cherry-picked an out-of-date poll to suggest that most Americans say the U.S. is now going in the right direction. Trump appeared to be citing a single poll published 3 weeks ago by the Republican-leaning polling firm Rasmussen, which showed a 47% to 46% edge for the right direction over the wrong direction. However, the most recent survey of that same polling firm Rasmussen this week shows that 45% of Americans now say the country is on the right track and 50% say it is on the wrong track. Rasmussen was secretly showing its results to the Trump campaign. We are going to label Rasmussen as an intrinsically partisan Republican pollster going forward. The latest Reuters Ipsos poll in late February shows that 49% of Americans say that the country is headed off on the wrong track, and just 34% say that the country is headed in the right direction. An Economist/YouGov poll last week found that 50% of Americans say the country is headed in the wrong direction, with just 38% saying it is on the right track. The most recent Morning Consult poll published on Sunday shows that the current spread is 56% wrong to 44% right in the final week of the first Trump administration. In 2021, Morning Consult found that 81% of Americans said the country was on the wrong track, with just 19% saying it was on the right track. Trump falsely claimed the Musk cost-cutting had found hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud since the start of its work. The Musk Department of Government Efficiency Initiative has repeatedly claimed to have uncovered fraud, only to have examples it cited turn out to be incorrect. Have invented the most eye-catching example, that the government planned to spend $50 million to send condoms to Gaza, turned out to be completely fictional. As the New York Times reported on Monday, receipts posted online by the Musk Department of Government Efficiency document less than $9 billion in savings from canceled government contracts, none of which involved fraud. 1D United States bad nominee MAGA lashes out at disgraceful Amy Coney Barrett after vote against Trump. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against with smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. Raw story, March 5, 2025. Justice Amy Coney Barrett is drawing the ire of MAGA fans after she sided with the liberals and against President Donald Trump in the case brought to fight back against cuts to contracts for USAID. The U.S. owed payments for work that had already been done. A legal reporter wrote a MAGA influencer attacked Barrett as disgraceful after she voted with John Roberts. He said she was a bad SCOTUS nominee. A far-right commentator replied, looking that way. Amy Coney Barrett is the Bill Barr of the Mike Pences, said a poster. The new guy in charge of USAID does not believe in foreign aid. The writing was on the wall with the Amy Coney Barrett appointment, and now the consequences will be felt for generations. Do not ever let the Federalist Society pick judges again, complained a Substacker. The news director for Florida Voice News called Barrett a big problem. An 18-year-old self-described political commentator posted, another day, another ruling. I am disappointed in Amy Coney Barrett for, but do not worry, the New York Times is putting her on a pedestal, so she has that going for her. Tells you all you need to know. 1. United States Trump administration Supreme Court rejects Trump request to continue freezing $2 billion in foreign aid. John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett joined liberal justices to leave and place lower court order on USAID excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization Wednesday, March 5. 2025. A divided U.S. Supreme Court has rejected the Trump administration request to continue freezing nearly $2 billion in foreign aid, marking a setback for the White House and the tech billionaire Elon Musk, who has been tasked with slashing the size of the U.S. government and its spending. In a 5-4 decision released on Wednesday, Chief Justice John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett joined the liberal justices in leaving in place a ruling from a U.S. district judge last month, which ordered the administration to unfreeze the nearly $2 billion in aid for work that had already been done and that had been approved by Congress. The unsigned brief released on Wednesday by the Supreme Court did not provide an explanation for its ruling. However, it instructed Judge Amir Ali to clarify his previous order concerning what obligations the government must fulfill to ensure compliance with the order. 4 of the conservative justices Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh dissented from the decision. According to the Just Security Tracker, there have been 96 legal challenges to the actions of the Trump administration to date. 1F United States EPA Trump administration White House to overhaul $42.5 billion Biden-era internet plan, probably to Elon The Musk advantage billionaire cost-cutter Starlink service, the likely beneficiary of Trump plan to alter rural internet program RAWSEP View. Even Republicans are aware of rural internet access that they would lose in their state if the BEAD program were cut by the new Trump administration. Fiber optic cables are not reliant on internet access, which can be cut off at the whim of internet providers such as the Musk Starlink. RAWSEP View of the Alaska BEAD example, when Republican Senator Dan Sullivan of Alaska asked Trump Administrator Lutnick whether Lutnick could assure Senator Dan Sullivan that commerce would not rely on the Musk Internet Starlink as a solution to all of our problems. Lutnick declined to answer, saying only that he would work to pursue the most efficient and effective solutions for Alaskans. RAWSEP View of the Louisiana BEAD example, for states like Louisiana, which was poised to receive $1,355 billion under the Biden program and was the first state to get full approval for its plan. Any change could upend estimates that the fiber optic build-out would drive $2 billion to $3 billion in economic growth for the state, and between 800 and 10,000 new jobs. Planned investments like a $10 billion AI center that is poised to be built by Meta in Richland Parish, a poor farming region in the northeast corner of the state, would depend on fiber optic connections. In a recent letter to Lutnick, the Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry said the state would be ready to break ground on its fiber optic network within the first 100 days of the administration. The top Louisiana official working on the program, Vinny Thienger, has said about 95% of Louisiana funds will be used to build fiber, and the remaining 5% will be used for cable, fixed wireless, and satellite. Trump administration officials have balked at the program price tag. RAWSEP View of the Wyoming BEAD example, the driving force behind BEAD was parity. Can you get internet service in rural Wyoming what you can get in suburban Denver? Fiber is utterly critical. If the internet is the most important infrastructure asset a state has, and you are using satellite, then it means you are not building something in your state. It can be turned on and off by the satellite provider. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian, March 5, 2025. The Trump administration is preparing to overhaul a $42.5 billion Biden-era program designed to connect tens of millions of rural Americans to reliable and affordable high-speed internet in a move that is expected to benefit billionaire Elon Musk, instead of promoting an expensive build-out of fiber optic networks. As the Biden administration sought to do, a new leader in the Trump administration has said he wants states to choose the internet technology that would be low cost for taxpayers, that experts agree would favor satellite companies like the Musk Starlink. Musk, whose company owns about 62% of all operating satellites, has not hidden his disdain for Biden-era program, telling voters last year that he believed it should be brought down to zero. Experts generally agree that using satellite services costs less to connect difficult to reach homes than fiber, but fiber also provides a more reliable, faster, and less expensive option for consumers. Any change to the program could face substantial pushback from states and Congress, including Republican senators who have previously sought assurances from administration officials that the federal program, which is expected to generate billions of dollars in long-term economic growth across some of the poorest states in the U.S., would largely be left alone. The so-called BEAD program, which stands for Broadband Equity Access and Deployment, was passed with bipartisan support in 2021 and aimed to connect 25 million Americans to high-speed internet. Under the Biden plan, states were left to make their own plans, request federal funding, and hold competitive bids for internet service providers that would build the network, given different choices of how to connect homes to high-speed internet. The Biden administration said it wanted states to build fiber optic networks, which are expensive to set up, but are considered reliable and can offer affordable rates to consumers. In cases where fiber optic networks were too expensive to build, states could opt for cheaper options like using satellite. I do not think there is doubt that BEAD will continue. What is in doubt is whether people get a long-term solution or something that is definitely good for Elon Musk. It is unclear whether Lutnick would try to force states to choose satellite service over other such changes, which would probably be challenged by individual states, would radically alter a program that has faced some criticism, but has generally been embraced by both Republican and Democratic governors across the U.S. who have been expecting to receive billions of dollars in federal funding. The funds would provide an economic lifeline that would connect an estimated 56 million households in mostly rural communities who are unserved or underserved to high-speed internet. It is estimated that the program as it stands now would generate at least $380,000 5,000 new jobs and fuel more than $3 trillion in economic growth. Any dramatic change too. The federal program also raises legal questions states have spent years planning for BEAD, including holding competitive bids for companies to build fiber networks. It is unclear whether the Commerce Department can force these states to restart their planning from scratch. The overriding criticism of the Biden program is that the bureaucracy took too long and that not a single household has yet been connected to high-speed internet. Yet the Trump administration might argue that states may as well start again to benefit taxpayers. Musk made his views about the program clear at a town hall meeting in Pittsburgh last October before the election. When he was asked about what he would do to help make the government more efficient, Musk immediately raised BEAD as an example of a program he would cut. I would say that program should be zero, he quipped at the time, while also suggesting that his own satellite company Starlink could provide internet connectivity to rural homes at a fraction of the connectivity costs. Starlink did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Some Republican senators asked Lutnick about his views on BEAD during his confirmation hearing, but he offered no promises. A Texas and Measles, and the Kennedy Jr. idea of vitamins instead of turning to modern medicine for vaccines or use of masks instead of vaccines. RFK Jr. focuses on unconventional measles treatments, driving worries about misinformation. RAWSEP View, the vain hope that Kennedy Jr. will not double down on his misinformation campaign against vaccines is dashed in the case of the measles outbreak among the unvaccinated in West Texas in February and March of 2025. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. CNN March 5, 2025. A measles outbreak in Texas has grown to 159 cases as a measles outbreak in West Texas continues to grow. The response from U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has leaned heavily on treatment with vitamin A, as well as good results from the use of the steroid budesonide, the antibiotic clarithromycin, and cod liver oil. Doctors say that this messaging might take away from efforts to increase vaccination, and some misinformation about these therapies is already circulating online. Many U.S. doctors have never seen measles given that the virus was declared eliminated in the country in 2000. There are no antiviral medications specifically to treat measles infections as measles outbreak grows. HHS Secretary says vaccination is a personal decision that can protect individuals and communities. Vitamin A is not a substitute for vaccination, said Dr. Megan Ranney, dean of the Yale School of Public Health. Vitamin A is important for vision and immunity. The World Health Organization recommends 2 doses for all children and adults who are diagnosed with measles. Guidance from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention also says vitamin A should be given to children with severe measles, such as those who are hospitalized, and specifies doses based on age. In an opinion piece published Sunday on Fox News, Kennedy referenced studies that show that vitamin A can dramatically reduce measles mortality. Speaking to Fox News on Tuesday, Kennedy described how CDC has been on the ground in West Texas and discussed the use of cod liver oil, which has high amounts of vitamins A and D. However, vitamin A is most useful for measles support in patients who have a specific deficiency. The studies mainly draw on evidence from low-income countries where that deficiency is common. It is actually valid information, said Dr. Amesha Daljare, senior scholar at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, but it is out of context. Vitamin A supplementation can be life-saving for measles cases when vitamin A deficiency is present. He said in these cases it strengthens the immune system in providing a response against the virus, but in the American context the data for vitamin A use in measles is weak. Vitamin A really does not have much of a role in the current discussion on the West Texas measles epidemic because it becomes a distraction about what we really need to focus on, which is vaccinating our kids. He said beyond the updated CDC guidelines on vitamin A there is no set treatment regimen for measles because cases in the U.S. have been generally rare. One of the medications that Kennedy mentioned, the antibiotic clarithromycin, could be an attempt to prevent secondary bacterial infections like pneumonia, but evidence for that is limited. Budesonide is a steroid with a variety of uses, but it is not clear how it might help someone with measles. The American Academy of Pediatrics released comments last week seeking to combat misinformation that says vitamin A can prevent measles. Vitamin A is only recommended in hospitalized patients, and it is only recommended at specific doses. I want to be very clear with that, because I do think there are patients who are not vaccinating and are just giving their kids high doses of vitamin A. Misinformation about vitamin A and measles is appearing on social media, and a doctor wants to inform people that vitamin A cannot be used as measles prevention. Excess amounts of vitamin A can even be dangerous. As pediatricians, we learn about vitamin A toxicity, but now we are watching for vitamin A toxicity in patients. Vitamin A toxicity can cause vomiting, nausea, blurry vision, muscle weakness, liver damage, and potential brain damage. The measles outbreak in West Texas stands at 159 cases as of Tuesday. Many are in Gaines County, home to a high number of unvaccinated people, including a Mennonite community. One unvaccinated school-age child has died. Experts say the case count is probably far greater than what has been reported. Some Texas residents have decided to get vaccinated, which experts attribute to access to good information. Those who are choosing vaccination are getting vaccine questions answered by medical and public health professionals rather than purveyors of disinformation on social media. The director of Lubbock Public Health and the director of Health and Human Services in Dallas County wrote in an opinion piece in a USA Today. Kennedy, who has a history of anti-vaccine activism, has said little about vaccination. He did not explicitly recommend the vaccine in his opinion piece on Fox News, calling the decision to vaccinate a personal one and acknowledging it can contribute to community immunity. In the Kennedy Jr. interview on Tuesday, he said, measles vaccination in highly unvaccinated communities like the Mennonites, it is something we recommend, but we also understand there is a lot of mistrust of the vaccines. 2B Washington Richland Hanford Works nuclear site, most contaminated U.S. nuclear site, is set to be the largest solar farm. Plans to transform Hanford, which was integral to the U.S. nuclear arsenal after World War II, had just begun inching forward when President Trump started his second term. RAWSEP View. If a site is unusable for normal human habitation, it can best be used for solar arrays. The Hanford Works is also an illustration of the danger of pursuing nuclear as an energy source. Human error can easily happen, and the risks of nuclear accidents is larger than any benefit from pursuing further nuclear energy projects for energy. Wind, solar, and geothermal are truly clean energy sources and are getting cheaper every day. In 2025 excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, March 5, 2025, 12:43 p.m. Eastern Time. In the weeks since President Trump has taken office, he has pushed to unleash oil and gas production and has signed executive orders halting the U.S. transition to renewable energy. But in Washington state, a government-led effort has just started to build what is expected to be the U.S. largest solar generating station. The project is finally inching forward after decades of cleaning up radioactive and chemical waste and fits and starts at the Hanford nuclear reservation, a sweep of desert that was pivotal to the U.S. weapons arsenal from 1943 until it was shut down in 1989. A developer, Hecate, was brought on last year to turn big stretches of the site into solar farms. Hecate will have access to 10,300 acres that the government has determined sufficiently safe to redevelop. The company has already started site evaluation on 8,000 acres, an area nearly 10 times the size of Central Park in New York and enough space for 345 million photovoltaic panels. The Hanford site is nearly 400,000 acres. If all goes according to plan, the Hecate project, which is expected to be completed in 2030, will be by far the largest site the government has cleaned up and converted from land that had been used for nuclear research, weapons, and waste storage. It is expected to generate up to 2,000 megawatts of electricity, enough roughly to supply all the homes in Seattle, San Francisco, and Denver, and store 2,000 more in a large battery installation at a total cost of $4 billion. The photovoltaic panels and batteries will provide twice as much energy as a conventional nuclear power plant. The U.S. current biggest solar plant, the Copper Mountain Solar Facility in Nevada, can generate up to 802 megawatts of energy. Initially, business leaders were concerned about the scale of the Hecate plan, but the Tri-City Development Council, which leases 1,641 acres from the federal government at the Hanford site, has come around largely because the Hecate energy can help recruit big projects that need the power to the area. One that has recently arrived is Atlas Agro, which is spending $1 billion on it. Agricultural fertilizer plant that has lower greenhouse gas emissions and reduces the pollution risk to water. We would not have been supportive if we just flooded this whole area with solar, said Sean O'Brien, director of the Energy Forward Alliance, a unit of the Development Council. We do not think that is the best economic development and job creator. We are all about the mix here. 3A Germany is back. Coalition unveils bumper $13 trillion spending pledge as country breaks with constitution to revive economy. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. MSN and Fortune.com, March 5, 2025. Germany finally unveiled a plan that could address years of economic decline and the war in Ukraine as the country announced plans to change its constitution and abandon its long-standing commitment to fiscal prudence. The CDU/CSU and SPD parties agreed to a mammoth spending package on Tuesday, the headline of which was a €500 billion, $535 billion fund over 10 years dedicated to upgrading German infrastructure, including across transport, energy, and digitization. The coalition also sealed a groundbreaking agreement to exempt defense spending above 1% of GDP from its strict debt brake, opening a path for the country to join the rest of Europe in upping its defenses. The political developments in Europe and the world are evolving faster than we anticipated just a week ago, said MERS. Germany and Europe must now undertake extraordinary efforts to ensure our defense capabilities. Analysts expect that taken together, the spending packages could eventually surpass €1 trillion, $13 trillion, representing about a quarter the size of the German economy. For years, economists have said that Germany needed to change its spending rules to get out of the economic hole it has taken. A conservative chancellor in waiting to pull the trigger. The German debt brake was introduced in 2009, restricting the annual budget deficit to 0.35 of GDP. The brake proved popular with German citizens, particularly as parts of southern Europe fell into major debt crises in the 2010s. However, the debt brake has turned burdensome as the German economy endures newfound economic struggles. The Russian invasion of Ukraine put pressure on energy prices in the country. Meanwhile, the German export-heavy economy has been racked by flagging demand, and China import tariffs on goods to the U.S. are expected to cause further pain for producers. Germany fights back. German struggles have resulted in 2 consecutive years of decline in economic growth, with economists projecting a further decline in 2025. In the process, there have been growing calls to scrap the debt brake and allow Germany to spend its way out of decline. Following the spending announcement, the German economy could grow by 0.6% this year and by 1.6% in 2026. The biggest contractor in Germany, Rheinmetall, doubled in valuation since the start of the year. The new measures in Germany would inevitably lead to rising debt, but that was a problem for another day. For now, the euro is the best performing currency in the G10 FX space this week. The DAX is continuing to dominate the equity market, and rising bond yields suggest a transformed economic outlook. Germany is back. The German defense pledge, which could see spending as a percentage of GDP exceed 3%, is a massive statement of intent from the European largest economy. After years of perceived underinvestment, the country has repeatedly fallen short of the NATO pledge to spend 2% of GDP on defense since the guideline was introduced in 2014. On Tuesday, the EU announced a spending plan that could unlock €800 billion, $840 billion for rearmament within the next 4 years. Speaking following the agreement, the German Chancellor in waiting, Friedrich Merz, emphasized the new reality Germany finds itself in as relations between the U.S. and Europe fracture. 3B German spending plans send powerful message to Putin and Trump and to markets, analysts say. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. MSN, March 5, 2025. German bond yields saw historic jumps on Wednesday as traders had their first opportunity to react to plans by the country for a huge uplift in spending that the Eurozone economy has for decades resisted the yield on the 30-year bond. Saw its biggest daily jump since 1998 as the benchmark 10-year bond climbed 17 basis points in reaction to the agreement between the German main two parties to get around the German debt break. German stocks also soared with the DAX surging over 3%, taking gains to 16% in the new year. The plans announced Tuesday night call for a €500 billion special purpose vehicle for infrastructure investment over a decade and a reform of the debt break to exempt any defense spending that exceeds 1% of GDP. The plans also call for reforms of the debt limits at the land or state level. They will require approval at the constitutional level, needing 2/3 parliamentary support. The package in total could be more than €1 trillion over 10 years. The moves come after President Donald Trump has paused military aid to Ukraine in dramatic fashion as key Trump allies, including Elon Musk, call for the U.S. to exit the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. The extra room for defense spending sends a clear signal to Putin and Trump, as well as to the European friends of Germany, that Germany is serious about defending itself and helping Ukraine, said the chief economist at Berenberg Bank. 3C Germany European markets soar as Germany moves to lift debt break and raise defense spending. The big bazooka of Berlin proposal sends industrial stocks surging, but fiscal sea change also hikes borrowing costs. German debt bazooka rallies stocks and euro. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian March 5, 2025 European financial markets have rallied sharply in German. Borrowing costs have soared after the prospective leaders of Germany announced a historic deal to loosen its debt break rule to boost spending on defense. The yield, in effect the interest rate on 30-year German government bonds, rose by about 25 basis points to 3.08% in its biggest daily increase since October 1998. The DAX 30 index, which tracks the largest German companies, rose by 3.6%, powered by industrial stock. Share prices also leapt in London, Paris, and Milan amid investor hopes that a massive boost in European spending on defense and infrastructure would kickstart the European ailing economy. Men in high-visibility vests stand by a green camouflage Challenger 3 tank inside a factory. European defense stocks soar as arms makers expect orders boom. Defense stocks have gained sharply in recent weeks as world leaders scramble to piece together the funding for a vast increase in military expenditure amid mounting concern over Donald Trump commitment to European security. The EU outlined a plan on Tuesday to unlock almost €800 billion, £670 billion for defense spending, while the UK government said last week it would raise its spending from 2.3% of GDP to 2.5% by 2027, 2 years earlier than planned, worth an additional £6 billion a year. Shares in Rheinmetall, the German automotive and arms manufacturer, rose by 7.2% on Wednesday and have rocketed by 99% this year. The British BA Systems has rallied by 41% so far this year. The Italian Leonardo is up 73%, and Paris-listed Thales has risen by 78%. Some analysts said there was a danger of the dollar losing its safe haven status among global investors as the Trump trade wars rattle the largest economy in the world in a sea change for economic policy after years of sticking to tough rules on government debt. The German Chancellor-in-waiting Friedrich Merz said on Tuesday that defense spending above 1% of GDP would be exempt from the German debt rule, agreed with the center-left Social Democrats, who are expected to form a coalition with the Merz Christian Democratic Union (CDU). The plan also includes the creation of a €500 billion fund to finance spending on the German infrastructure over the next 10 years. Any lifting of the debt break must command a 2/3 majority in the Bundestag. In response, the biggest construction and engineering companies in Germany posted sharp share gains on Wednesday. The extra room for defense spending sends a clear signal to Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, as well as to the European friends of Germany, that Germany is serious about defending itself and helping Ukraine. Described as one of the most historic paradigm shifts in German post-war history by economists at Deutsche Bank, the deal will effectively sideline the constitutional debt break, or Schuldenbremse, for spending on defense introduced in 2009 by Angela Merkel after the financial crisis. The rule, often restricting annual federal borrowing to 0.35% of GDP, had been symbolic of the German strict approach to tax and spending policy. City analysts said sidelining the rule would be a game changer for the German economy amid big challenges from collapsing industrial output weakened by slack demand and competition from Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers. Germany was facing a potential growth trajectory heading towards zero over coming years. The defense and infrastructure boost catapults growth prospects closer to 1.5% to 2% for 2027 onwards. The debt-fueled stimulus package comes with a cost reflected in a rise in 10-year bond yields to almost 2.7%. However, German borrowing costs still remain significantly lower than in the US and the UK, where yields have reached more than 4%.
One introduction. RAWSEP View. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions. Yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree. But it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is Not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut down and burn tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove. An international convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP View purple air PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.